position, we are actually tasked with exploring how the upcoming leadership change could influence not just the African Union reforms, but Africa's standing on the global stage. To note, the four candidates or political African politicians contesting the position of the African Union Commission include Djiboutian Mahamoud Ali Yusuf, Kenyan Raila Odinga, and Mauritanian Anil Goyan, and the Malagasy Richard Randramandrato. And of course, campaigns are ongoing already. The outcomes of these polls will determine the next line of action to be adopted by the African Union stakeholders, especially in line with policy implementation and practical reforms in a more complex society. The African Union, should be noted, plays a crucial role in championing peace, security, and sustainable development across Africa, with calls for significant reforms echoing throughout international corridors. The new leadership will face the critical task of ensuring the AU remains relevant and effective in addressing contemporary challenges faced by the African continent. First, with an esteemed panel of experts, we seek to share insight on the internal and external factors surrounding the African Union, its reform process, and what it takes for the next chairperson of the African Union Commission to achieve continental objectives aligned with Africa's Agenda 2063. Stay tuned. This is Global Insight. Of course, it is time for us to build the Africa we want, the mantra embedded in Africa's Agenda 2063. I must welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, and as already underlined in the preamble, we are looking at the impending elections of the African Union Commission, and of course, coming at a time where the calls for EU reforms have intensified across various spheres in Africa. So what are the stakes? Of course, what should we expect from these four candidates? The cap is on East Africa this time around, and who will be the winner? We'll have, of course, the agenda of the African continent, especially at the global level, and there will be replacing Charles Musa Faki Mahamat, who has been at the helm of the African Union Commission since the year 2017. Of course, without much ado, we're going to uncover the panel this moment that will give us insight onto what expectations we have regarding the candidates vying for this very important position, the African Union Commission. And with delight, I will take us now to Algeria to welcome Professor LAEED ZAGHLAMI, Algiers University, Faculty of Information and Communication. Hello to you, Professor LAEED, and welcome to today's edition of the program.
Good afternoon to you, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you, Clark, for having me on the program again, and to your guest and panel, David and Elias, my regard. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving us your time this day, Professor LAEED, to the United States of America. Let's welcome Professor David MONDA, international relations expert, public policy analyst, of course, who hails from the East African nation of Kenya. Welcome, Professor MONDA.
Thank you for having me.
Looking forward to having a fruitful conversation with you. Of course, Kenya's Raila Odinga is contesting this very important position of the African Union Commission. We stay in the United States of America with Dr. Eddie Eric, Program Officer at the Solidarity Center from Côte d'Ivoire. Hello to you, Dr. Eddie, and welcome to today's Global Insight. While waiting for Dr. Eddie Eric to join us, let's also acknowledge Dr. Elijah ENOAKU, if he's already there, Director of Center for Africa Development of Cameroon nationality. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a discursive program, and just to note that we'll be broadcasting live on YouTube and Facebook, so you can always keep your comments pertaining at subject matter, which is, I think, very pivotal for the African continent in present society. We're going to dive straight away. Let me start off with you, Professor MONDA. I would love us to have an overview of our topic for today. We are focusing particularly on the impending elections of the African Union Commission Chair billed for February 2025. But I would like us, of course, to have an overview of the subject matter, especially as calls have intensified for practical reforms to meet the changing times.
Yes, so thank you very much again for having me. I think this race is very important because the holder of, the African Union Commission Chair will have a very instrumental role, not only in overseeing the Commission, but also in reforming the Commission. As we know, the AU came in after the change from the Organization of African Unity into the African Union because of this desire to more fully integrate the continent, to more fully integrate the sovereignties of the 55 different parts of the continent in terms of nation states, but also more effectively to deal with economic, security, political, environmental, and cultural challenges that face the continent. So I think it's a very critical juncture in terms of the future of the African Union, and more specifically around how to change the African Union Commission into an African Union authority. In other words, to give it more teeth and more power away from the heads of state meeting, and to provide for the Secretariat with a lot more power. But I think, secondly, also reforming the institution around its funding, and also around how to ensure that the regional economic communities are able to handle the security challenges in their different areas. As we know, for example, in Sudan, in northeastern Africa, we have this continuing war. We have the problems in the DRC, in Central Africa. The AU's not done an effective role of bringing those into control. We have problems in the Sahel with, external actors and collapse of the state and military governments. So there's a whole range, a whole plethora of challenges, not only political, economic, but also environmental, around what the new chair of the African Union Commission, what they will have to face.
Absolutely, which is very imperative, Professor MONDA, noting that the new chair will have to put into consideration the changing times, a moment of shifting alliances. Is it time for the AU to revisit its preamble, of course, to go back to the drawing board and see what has to be updated to meet, of course, the changing times? To note that, ladies and gentlemen, The objective of this program today is to explore the stakes surrounding the upcoming African Union Commission chair election and its implication on continental reforms. And so in the same perspective, we want to have an opening overview from Professor LAEED on a subject matter today. Of course, you have the mic, Professor LAEED.
Thank you very much, Clarice. Of course, what we need right now, African Union should assess its strength as well as its weakness. What has been achieved for 2 mandates of Fatima Mahamat. And of course, we are not here to blame here for this or that. We are here to make an objective and fair assessment of what were his key achievements. And of course, we have to speak also about the failure. It's hard to it's right to say, it's worth to say that African Union has not been very efficient. This is my view as far as its impact or its role or its contribution in the world affairs. I would say for many years, African Union has been lagging behind. Instead of taking the lead, they have always been invited as subcontracting for other powers. And frankly, when I see these different summits, multilateral summits between Africa and Japan, Africa and United Nations, European Union, Africa and South Korea, Africa and Turkish and so forth, I feel like this is Africa is asking for help, is begging for us. This image should be removed. Africa Union should speak on equal base with blocks, not with only countries. We cannot bring 55 leaders and bring them to meet with one country. This is completely ridiculous. And I am utterly opposed to this kind of situation. It's like people are making a tourism visit, and of course then they are mistreated. I remembered what the reaction of the president of Ruto, William Ruto of Kenya, when he said we were taken in the bus like kids. Now this is not should be. This way of dealing should be completely removed. Africa has time has come that they stand up on their own feet and discuss and talk and speak on equal basis with all countries and particularly with all blocs. We cannot accept this bringing the whole continent, 55 people, 55 countries coming to speak one with one. This is completely wrong. More than that, African, if we talk about what is happening now in the African Union in terms of achievement, still we are facing so many problems, whether it's in the case in Libya right now, in Western Sahara, in the Sahel, in Congo, and so forth. There are so many problems, and we have foreign military intervention. Why don't we activate the standby of African force? So I don't know if there is really a political will from the leader of countries to really to impose their views over African issues. African problems should be solved by the African leaders themselves.
Okay. Thank you so much for the introductory statement into our topic for this Professor LAEED. And of course, still under the contextual background of our topic for this day, Professor MONDA, let me come back to you while we highlight some of the perspective on the importance of the African Union Commission leadership in driving practical reforms, given that the AUC stands practically or largely as the heart of the AU.
Yes, this is very true. The Commission stands at the heart of the AU, you know, we will talk a lot about the challenges of the African Union but I think there've also been some significant positives, and maybe I'll highlight, a few. I think the continent has been very vocal when you think about the use of multilateral institutions, specifically around driving the agenda of the continent on climate change. We had a very good coalescing of all heads of states, foreign ministers in Nairobi last year around the Nairobi Declaration on pushing the global, on pushing the Western nations, the developed nations, China, to do more around global climate change. And, the African voice in terms of climate change and the need for Africa to be provided with the technological support, and also for the more developed nations, the developed nations to pay for climate change, I think was a significant was a significant milestone. Yeah. We saw the situation in Senegal, where we recently had a very successful election. Although there were challenges around, the former president wanting to remain in power, but we saw the people's voice, come through in terms of that. But I also think in terms of the Ukraine Russia divide, the West has not been as successful in terms of dividing the continent on that issue. Most African countries have opted to either abstain, usually to abstain from taking sides, to either support the United States and the Western allies or Russia. And I think that's important, particularly for the continent, with a lot of weaker nation states that are on the periphery of the international system, to focus more on their core national interests. So I think those are a range of, some of the successes. But as we mentioned, there's still major challenges. Specifically, I'll highlight the funding of the African Union. We still rely significantly on funding from abroad for the African Union, which is highly problematic. The issue of heads of state not being jealous of their sovereignty, not wanting to pool their common sovereignties together to speak with one voice, I think is another problem. Absolutely. So for example, President of Kenya wants to act independent from President of Cameroon, President of Cameroon wants to act independent from President of Nigeria. So you have all these different divisions. That's still a big problem, particularly as you've mentioned, when we're focusing on the African Union Commission. The head of the commission has to try and get all these 55 different heads of states to work together. And a lot of them do not want to give up power. So I think that's another major challenge. I think that the fourth one will also be, how do you reform the African Union Commission to become an African Union authority? So give it more teeth. So for example, when you think about the Africa peer review mechanism, right? Sure. What are some of the consequences for countries falling behind the expectations of the peer review mechanism? In terms of democratic backsliding, what do we do with countries in the Sahel, for example, where military governments topple democratically elected civilian regimes and refuse to get out of power? I think there's been a paralysis in terms of ECOWAS, in terms of how to deal with the democratic deconsolidation and this proliferation of military coup d'etat in the Sahel belt. Okay. ECOWAS had previously been very successful with intervening in terms of coup d'etat in West Africa. We saw the case of Gambia with Yahya Jammeh, but it seems that they've not been able to decisively deal with this new wave of the authoritarians and military rulers that have taken power illegitimately. So I think there's both, there's a basket of positives, but there's also a bigger basket of challenges. And, you know, I'm excited to unpack that more with you today.
Absolutely, Professor MONDA, unpacking the challenges and, of course, understanding the complexities and what the impending or the incoming AUC chair will have to handle as far as the continent is concerned. Let's welcome Dr. Elijah ENOAKU, of course, with this question. Dr. ENOAKU, we are looking at the African Union Commission elections which are billed for February 2025, and looking at the challenges or the scope for the incoming or upcoming AUC Commission. Now it is coming at a time of, great diplomatic fluid across the African continent. And what prospects for the upcoming leader in trying to resolve some of these diplomatic fluid in order to cement the African Union that will be more instrumental in driving the right trajectory for the Africa we want? Welcome.
Thank you, Clarice, and thank you to all the viewers. I want to begin by saying that when you send the list of potential candidates that we have that are coming up, it sends shockwaves down my spine. Say that if these are the potential candidates that we're having right now, I'm very sorry to disappoint you that I'm starting on a very negative note. The Africa that we are expecting in this dispensation is an Africa that is going to deal with military challenges all over the world. The Africa that we are expecting in this dispensation is the Africa that's going to carry out the Agenda 2063. That's a gigantic agenda that you need radical performances, radical leaders, people with vision. The Africa that we are looking forward to is an Africa that's going to tackle the challenge of malnutrition and lack of food sufficiency on the